The galaxy was plunged into darkness. Across every star system, civilizations trembled in fear, for a new force had emerged, one more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen before. The Zorath Empire, an alien race with vast military superiority, had begun their relentless conquest. They crushed world after world with their advanced weapons and AI-controlled warships, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The once thriving planets were now reduced to rubble, their people enslaved or wiped out. In the heart of the galaxy sat the Galactic Council, a coalition of the most powerful and technologically advanced species in the universe. For eons, they had ruled the galaxy, maintaining a delicate balance of power. But now the Zorath Empire had thrown that balance into chaos. The Council, once proud and untouchable, watched in silent terror as the Zorath marched forward, unstoppable and merciless. The galaxy's most formidable leaders, who had spent their lives preserving peace and order, now found themselves powerless. No one dared to challenge the Zorath. To do so was certain death. Their technology was too advanced, their weapons too strong. The Zorath were invincible. And yet, amid this overwhelming threat, there was one planet that stood apart from all the others, a planet that had been laughed at, belittled, and overlooked for centuries. Earth. The humans, once seen as weak and insignificant, had spent years quietly building their strength in the shadows, unnoticed by the larger galactic powers. But now they had something the Zorath did not expect: the will to fight back. The humans had spent years perfecting their technology, slowly catching up to the galactic powers. Earth's military, now a force to be reckoned with, had created a fleet of warships equipped with cloaking technology and advanced AI to command their ships in battle. The ships were fast, efficient, and most importantly, deadly. These ships were built with experimental weapons designed specifically to counter the Zorath's technological advantages. The humans weren't going to let their planet be crushed by the Zorath without a fight. A high-stakes meeting was called on Earth. The top leaders of the military, the government, and the scientific community gathered to discuss their response to the growing Zorath threat. The room was filled with tension. Fear was in the air. Some of the leaders suggested surrendering to the Zorath, offering Earth's resources in exchange for peace. But Captain Elena Hartley, the commander of Earth's fleet, stood up and spoke with fierce determination. She had seen what the Zorath had done to other worlds, and she would not let it happen to Earth. "We must fight," she declared. "We cannot bow to these invaders. If we are to survive, we must take the fight to them. Now is the time to strike." Her words were bold and defiant. The room fell silent for a moment. Some of the leaders hesitated. The Zorath were ruthless, and the humans had no idea what they were truly up against. But Hartley's conviction was unwavering. This was their only chance. She knew that if they didn't act now, Earth would be lost forever. The decision was made. The fleet would be assembled, and they would take the fight to the Zorath. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Zorath-controlled planet, disable their weapons, and strike at the heart of their empire. It was a suicide mission, but it was humanity's only hope. There was no turning back now. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, the atmosphere on the command ship was tense. Captain Hartley stood at the helm, gazing out at the stars. Her face was a mixture of determination and sorrow. She knew the risks. There was a very real chance that they wouldn't make it back. But this was the price of survival. Earth had no other option. As the fleet soared into space, Captain Hartley's mind was consumed by the weight of the mission ahead. The fate of her people rested in her hands. The human fleet was small compared to the mighty Zorath warships, but their fleet had something the Zorath didn't expect: stealth. The humans used advanced cloaking technology that would allow them to slip past the Zorath defenses undetected. But it wasn't enough to just sneak by the Zorath. The fleet would need to strike quickly and decisively. As the fleet approached the Zorath-controlled planet, the camera zoomed out to reveal the size and scale of the Zorath warships that loomed ominously in the distance. These ships were monstrous, their hulking shapes blocking out the stars behind them. The Zorath had already established their dominance over the planet, with massive energy weapons ready to destroy anything in their path. The camera shifted to the command ship, where Captain Hartley stood at the bridge, watching the approaching Zorath fleet. Her grip tightened on the controls, her eyes focused on the task ahead. The vastness of the Zorath warships felt like a crushing weight. They seemed invincible, like a wall that no human force could ever breach. As Captain Hartley looked out at the fleet, a part of her wondered if this was the end. Could humanity truly stand up against an empire this powerful? But then, she remembered why they were here. The Zorath had destroyed countless worlds. They had enslaved entire civilizations. They had brought nothing but death and destruction to the galaxy. Humanity was their last hope, the only race left that had the courage to fight. The stakes had never been higher. Captain Hartley took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She turned to her crew. "We fight for Earth. We fight for our future." The fleet emerged from cloaking, and the battle began. The Zorath were caught off guard for a moment, as the humans unleashed their surprise attack. It was a brutal, fast-paced skirmish. The human ships darted in and out of the Zorath defenses, using their superior speed and maneuverability to launch precise strikes against the enemy ships. It was a fight the humans couldn't afford to lose, and they gave everything they had to gain the upper hand. But as the human ships pressed forward, the full power of the Zorath warships became evident. The Zorath flagship appeared, a colossal vessel brimming with weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets in a single blast. The humans' chances of winning this battle were slim, but they pressed on, determined to show the Zorath that they would not be defeated so easily. The first shots were fired, and the battle turned into chaos. Explosions rocked the command ship as lasers flashed across the battlefield. The human fleet was outnumbered, and the Zorath were relentless. But Captain Hartley knew that victory was still possible. She had one more card to play: the secret weapon. The eye-controlled assault drones hidden aboard the human ships. These drones would give the humans an edge, but they had to be used wisely. The fleet's survival depended on their success. As the human fleet clashed with the Zorath, the camera zoomed in on the tense faces of the crew. The stakes were higher than ever. The Zorath were overwhelming in their power, but the humans were determined to make their stand. In the end, it was the humans' fighting spirit that would either win them the battle or lead them to their doom. The suspense was thick in the air as the battle raged on, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Would humanity survive the Zorath onslaught, or would they become just another victim of the galaxy's most feared empire? This was only the beginning of the war. The human fleet emerged from the blackness of space, silently gliding toward the target planet. The mission was simple: infiltrate, disable, and strike. However, as they neared their objective, the first signs of the Zorath's brutal invasion were clear. The planet was burning. The once vibrant cities had become mere shadows of their former selves, reduced to ruins by a relentless bombardment. Energy beams from massive Zorath warships rained down from the sky, decimating everything in their path. The destruction was beautiful in its own horrific way. Massive plumes of fire and smoke rose into the atmosphere, creating a dark, ominous cloud that obscured the planet's surface. There was no sign of resistance. The Zorath had already begun their conquest. The human fleet remained cloaked, invisible to the Zorath's advanced detection systems. They had the element of surprise, but their fleet was small compared to the might of the Zorath. Their ships were sleek and fast, built for agility and precision. But size mattered in space combat, and the Zorath fleet had them outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed. As the human ships drifted closer, the full scale of the destruction below became even more apparent. Towering Zorath warships hovered in the sky like dark, menacing gods, their weapons firing relentlessly at the cities below. The once proud planet was being annihilated, and it was clear that the Zorath had no mercy. Captain Elena Hartley stared at the planet's surface from the bridge of her command ship, her eyes cold and determined. She had led her fleet through countless obstacles, but this was different. This was the heart of the Zorath Empire's power, and they were the underdogs. But humanity had something the Zorath didn't expect: hope. "We fight for Earth," she repeated to herself, trying to steady her nerves. As the human fleet neared the edge of the planet's atmosphere, Captain Hartley gave the order to decloak. The ships flickered into visibility, their sleek forms now exposed to the hostile Zorath forces. The first strike was theirs. The battle erupted instantly. The human fleet surged forward, their ships darting and weaving between the debris left by the Zorath's earlier attacks. They didn't stand a chance in a head-on confrontation, so they used their speed and maneuverability to their advantage. The human ships launched fast, calculated strikes against the Zorath warships. Laser fire streaked through the blackness of space, a burst of energy that quickly turned the quiet void into chaos. The Zorath, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human ships, scrambled to react, but it was too late. The humans had already initiated their attack. Captain Hartley's heart pounded in her chest as she watched her fleet launch wave after wave of strikes. The ships were fast, but each move had to be carefully planned. A wrong move could spell disaster. The Zorath warships retaliated with brutal efficiency, firing their massive energy weapons at the human ships. The space around them lit up with explosions, the sound of destruction ringing in the silent expanse. One of the human ships exploded in a violent burst, sending a cloud of debris into the void. The loss was felt deeply across the fleet. The ship's crew, their families, their friends, gone in an instant. Hartley's breath caught in her throat as she watched the ship disintegrate, but there was no time to mourn. The fight was far from over, and more lives would be lost before this was through. "We fight on," she muttered, rallying her crew. They had no choice but to keep fighting. The battle grew more intense with each passing minute. The Zorath fleet was relentless, their warships firing on the human ships with terrifying precision. The humans had the advantage at speed, but the Zorath's firepower was unmatched. The human fleet was taking heavy losses, but they fought with everything they had. Each ship that fell only fueled the anger of those still alive. The crew of the command ship held their breath as another Zorath warship was destroyed in a brilliant explosion. But it wasn't enough. Then the true challenge appeared. The Zorath flagship emerged from the darkness, a towering vessel the size of a small moon. It was a behemoth, bristling with weapons capable of annihilating entire fleets with a single strike. The humans froze for a moment, staring at the monstrosity before them. The flagship was a fortress, and there was no way they could take it head-on. It was armed with enough firepower to destroy every ship in the human fleet within seconds. Captain Hartley's mind raced. There was no choice now. If they didn't destroy that flagship, they would be wiped out, and the Zorath's victory would be assured. "We have to take it down," she ordered, her voice steady but filled with urgency. The fleet regrouped, their ships quickly calculating the best course of action. The plan was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it was the only option they had. Captain Hartley knew the risks, and she knew that many more lives would be lost. But she also knew that if they didn't try, they would have no future. The human fleet split into two groups, one to draw the flagship's fire, the other to make a direct assault. The plan was risky, and the odds were stacked against them, but there was no turning back now. The first group of human ships charged at the Zorath flagship, weaving between firestorms of energy beams that lashed out from the massive ship. Their ships were small and fast, darting in and out of the flagship's range. The human ships fired relentlessly, trying to distract the flagship long enough for the second group to get into position. The flagship's massive weapons lashed out, vaporizing any ship that came too close, but the humans were skilled, dodging, weaving, surviving by the skin of their teeth. The second group of ships moved in, their engines roaring as they neared the flagship. The Zorath flagship fired upon them. its lasers cutting through space like molten blades. But the human ships were ready. They launched a barrage of missiles, each one targeting weak spots in the flagship's defenses. The human ships fired everything they had, hoping against hope that they could bring down the mighty vessel. The Zorath flagship shook as the missiles hit their mark, sparks flying from the hull as it struggled to maintain its course. The flagship retaliated with a massive pulse of energy, and one of the human ships exploded in a blinding flash. Another ship was hit, its engines bursting into flames before it vanished into the void. The human fleet was slowly being whittled down, but they fought on, unwilling to give up. Captain Hartley's face was grim as she watched the destruction unfold before her. The battle was becoming a slaughter, but she couldn't let her fleet lose hope. "Keep going," she commanded. "We're almost there." The final assault was launched, and the Zorath flagship shuddered under the barrage. A final, well-placed missile hit the heart of the flagship's core, and the massive ship began to break apart. The explosion was catastrophic. The flagship was destroyed, its massive form disintegrating into thousands of pieces that scattered across the void. The battle was over, but the victory was bittersweet. The human fleet had lost many ships, and countless lives were sacrificed for the victory. Captain Hartley stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage of the Zorath flagship, her heart heavy with the weight of the cost. But the mission had been successful. They had struck a blow against the Zorath, and it had been a victory that would be remembered across the galaxy. As the human fleet regrouped, Captain Hartley looked out into space. The war had just begun. The battle for survival was far from over. The humans had fought valiantly, and their first victory over the Zorath flagship had sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. But the cost of that victory was heavy. The human fleet had lost many ships, and lives had been sacrificed for a fleeting chance at defeating the unstoppable force that was the Zorath. Yet there was no time to mourn. The war was still raging, and humanity's desperate push for survival was about to take an even darker turn. Captain Elena Hartley stood at the bridge of her ship, staring at the remaining fleet. The Zorath were relentless, and their warships were still hovering above the planet, poised to wipe out every last trace of resistance. But the humans had one more move to make. They would have to go on the offensive, striking deep into the heart of the Zorath Empire. Then came the moment that would change everything. The Bonner, a human warship, and one of the few remaining vessels in the fleet, took a direct hit from a Zorath energy blast. The explosion was cataclysmic. For a moment, the space around the human fleet was filled with a blinding light, and the Bonner was gone. It disintegrated in a flash, a ghost of what it once was, and with it, hundreds of lives were lost, including a close friend of Captain Hartley. Her mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. Lieutenant James Miller, a longtime friend and one of her most trusted officers, had been aboard the Bonner. His loss was not just a military blow. It was personal. Captain Hartley had trained with Miller, laughed with him, and shared countless moments of camaraderie. Now he was gone. The grief hit her like a physical blow, but there was no time to grieve. The remaining crew members on the bridge turned to her, waiting for orders. Hartley clenched her fists, trying to keep her emotions in check. "We fight on," she said quietly, her voice filled with determination. She knew she had to keep the crew focused, even though every part of her wanted to scream in frustration and grief. But there was something else that stirred within her, the burning desire for revenge. As the human fleet continued to engage the Zorath, Hartley made a vow. She would make the Zorath pay for every life lost, for every friend sacrificed. She couldn't bring Miller back, but she could make sure that the Zorath would never forget the human resistance. The crew needed something to fight for, and Hartley knew what that was now. It wasn't just about defeating the Zorath. It was about honoring the fallen, especially those like Miller, who had given everything to the cause. The news of the Bonner's destruction spread through the fleet, and the mood turned somber. But the crew members did not falter. They had seen too much death, too much destruction, to back down now. If anything, the loss of the Bonner only steeled their resolve. The human fleet was united by a common purpose, revenge, and the will to survive. Hartley gathered her officers in the briefing room. The walls were lined with flickering holoscreens, displaying the latest reports on the battlefront. But all of them were focused on her now, waiting for her to speak. She looked around at their faces, each one reflecting the same mixture of pain and determination she felt inside. They had all lost friends, comrades, loved ones, but they had also gained something that could never be taken from them: resolve. "We've lost too much already," Hartley began, her voice unwavering. "But we're not done. We have one more chance to end this, to take the fight to them. The Zorath think they can crush us, think they can wipe us out. But they're wrong. We're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting for everyone we've lost, for every life they've taken, for James, for all of them." The room fell silent as her words sank in. They all knew what this meant. It meant taking the fight directly to the Zorath flagship, boarding their ship and disabling their main weapon systems. It was a suicide mission. The human fleet was already outnumbered and outmatched, and now they would have to board a Zorath warship, one of the deadliest ships in existence, to destroy it from the inside. Hartley's mind raced as she considered the implications. They were walking into the heart of the Zorath Empire, and there was no way to know if any of them would survive. But this was their only shot. The humans had no choice but to make a desperate push, risking everything they had left for the chance to turn the tide of the war. The crew prepared for the assault. Soldiers moved quickly through the ship's corridors, loading weapons, checking their armor, and making sure everything was in place. The tension was thick, but there was also an undeniable sense of purpose. The humans knew what they were fighting for now. They weren't just fighting to save Earth. They were fighting for each other, for the memory of those who had fallen, for revenge against the ruthless Zorath. As the team prepared to board the Zorath ship, Captain Hartley shared a quiet moment with her second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Alex Torres. He was one of the few remaining members of her inner circle, someone who had been by her side through countless battles. He was more than just a colleague. He was a friend. "If we don't make it back," Hartley said softly, looking him in the eye, "remember, we were never afraid to fight." Torres nodded, his face grim. He knew the risks, knew the odds were slim, but he was ready. He had always followed Hartley into the heart of danger, and he wasn't about to stop now. He placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "We'll make it back," he said, though both of them knew the truth. Their chances of survival were slim, but they would face it together. They had always faced it together. The human soldiers boarded their shuttles, their faces set in determination as they prepared to take on the Zorath flagship. The last of the human fleet held position in space, offering support, but it was clear that the real battle would be fought on the enemy ship. The boarding team readied their weapons, and with a final look at one another, they launched toward their target. As they approached the Zorath flagship, the humans knew they were about to step into the heart of the beast. The Zorath flagship loomed ahead, its massive form filling the screen. The ship's weapons were poised, ready to fire at anything that came too close. But the humans were not deterred. They had lost everything already. They had no choice but to fight. The battle to board the flagship was fierce. As they breached the Zorath ship, the humans faced a barrage of energy blasts, each one threatening to tear them apart. But they fought on, pushing forward with everything they had. Each step took them deeper into the heart of the enemy's fortress. They would either succeed in destroying the Zorath's weapons, or they would die trying. Either way, they would not go down without a fight. As the team moved forward, Captain Hartley's thoughts were with those who had come before her, those who had fallen in this desperate war. She could almost hear their voices, urging her on, telling her not to give up. She would finish this. For them. For Earth, she whispered to herself, steeling her resolve. The humans pushed forward, taking the fight to the heart of the Zorath Empire. Every moment was a step closer to victory, or to their doom. The stakes had never been higher, and the cost would be unimaginable. But for the first time in this war, the humans felt something they hadn't felt before, a glimmer of hope. The air inside the Zoreth flagship was thick with tension. As the human soldiers stormed the ship, every step brought them closer to their target, the heart of the Zoreth Empire. They had fought through endless challenges, facing overwhelming odds, but this was the final push. The humans knew that this boarding mission was their last chance to strike a decisive blow. Victory was within their grasp, but so was death. The battle for the Zoreth flagship was unlike anything the human soldiers had ever experienced. The hulls of the ship were narrow and dimly lit, the walls thick with alien technology, and the remnants of past battles. Sparks flew from damaged panels, casting erratic glows across the soldiers' faces. The air smelled of burned metal, and the sound of laser fire echoed through the corridors like a constant drumbeat. Every step forward was a fight for survival, every breath a reminder that death was waiting just around the corner. The human soldiers, dressed in their heavy combat suits, moved like shadows, their energy weapons blazing as they cut down Zoreth guards. The Zoreth, towering and terrifying, came at them with brutal force, their alien armor almost impervious to the human weaponry. But the humans had something the Zoreth didn't: strategy, training, and the will to fight for something greater than themselves. The clash between the soldiers was intense. Zoreth soldiers charged, their sharp claws slicing through the air, but the humans used their guerrilla warfare tactics to stay one step ahead. They ducked into side passages, using the shadows to their advantage, picking off enemies from unexpected angles. They were small in number but fast, agile, and relentless. The Zoreth, on the other hand, relied on their superior strength and advanced weaponry. But even with all their might, they were unable to break the humans' resolve. Captain Hartley led the charge, her voice steady and commanding as she directed her team. Every order she gave, every movement she made, was calculated with precision. She had been through hell and back with her crew, and she wasn't about to let them down now. As they pushed deeper into the flagship, the fighting grew fiercer. The Zoreth forces had already been alerted to their presence, and the resistance became stronger with each passing second. The soldiers fought tooth and nail, but the Zoreth were relentless. The humans had no choice but to press on. They had no backup, no reinforcements. It was either succeed or perish. But despite the chaos around them, the humans refused to give in. They fought for each other, for the fallen, and for the chance to see Earth's enemies destroyed once and for all. The deeper they went into the ship, the more dangerous it became. Every room they entered was a battlefield, each hallway a deadly trap. The Zoreth had prepared for this, but the humans were prepared for anything. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air as the two forces clashed. The humans pushed forward, undeterred by the losses they had already suffered. They knew the mission was far from over, and there was no turning back now. As the soldiers reached the heart of the flagship, they came face to face with the Zoreth's last line of defense, the Zoreth commander. Towering and imposing, he stood at the center of the command center, surrounded by his elite guards. The air in the room seemed to grow colder as the humans entered, their weapons raised and ready to strike. Captain Hartley was at the forefront, her body bruised and bloodied from the relentless fighting. She had seen death take many of her comrades, but she refused to let it take her now. Her eyes locked with the Zoreth commanders, and in that moment, it was clear that this would be the final confrontation. The Zoreth commander sneered, his voice a low growl as he taunted her. "You think you can defeat me? You are nothing compared to the might of the Zoreth Empire." His voice echoed in the chamber, filled with arrogance and disdain. But Hartley was undeterred. "You've underestimated us from the beginning," she replied, her voice steady despite the injuries she had sustained. She could feel the weight of her crew's sacrifice pushing her forward. "We're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting for everyone you've taken from us." The commander's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward, his massive form looming over her. "You are nothing but insects, crawling in the shadows," he spat. and soon you will be crushed beneath my heel." The battle between Hartley and the Zorath commander was brutal. The commander's strength was unmatched, and every blow he landed sent shockwaves through Hartley's body. But the captain refused to give up. She had fought too hard, lost too much to let this be the end. The Zorath's weapons were powerful, but humanity's greatest strength had always been their resilience. They refused to be broken, no matter the odds. Hartley's vision blurred as she fought, her body aching, but the memory of her fallen crew pushed her forward. She thought of Lieutenant James Miller, of the friends they had lost, of every sacrifice made to get them this far. She couldn't afford to fail now. In a final, desperate move, Hartley found a weakness in the commander's defense. She took advantage of a moment of hesitation, striking with everything she had left. Her weapon pierced the Zorath commander's chest, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The commander let out a strangled cry as he collapsed to the ground, his life draining away. The human soldiers stood in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on their captain, who now stood victorious over their greatest enemy. Hartley was battered and bloodied, but she had won. She had defeated the commander. The Zorath Empire had been dealt a devastating blow, but the cost had been great. The remaining soldiers gathered around their fallen comrades, their faces somber. They had won the battle, but the victory felt hollow. Too many lives had been lost. Too many had made the ultimate sacrifice for this moment. They knew the war was not over, but for now, they could take solace in the fact that they had struck a decisive blow against the Zorath. With the Zorath commander's death, the flagship's control began to falter. The massive warship, once a symbol of the Zorath's power, was now slowly drifting into chaos. The human soldiers worked quickly, planting charges to ensure the ship would be destroyed, taking out the remaining Zorath forces as they made their way to the exit. The flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light, a massive shockwave rippling through the battlefield. The remaining Zorath ships, now without their flagship, were left vulnerable. The human fleet surged forward, attacking with renewed strength. It was a final push, one that would mark the beginning of the end for the Zorath invasion. As the dust settled, Captain Hartley and her crew stood together, victorious. The battle had been won, but the victory came at a great cost. The humans had fought with everything they had, and in the end, they had succeeded. But as they looked at the wreckage of the Zorath flagship and the many lives they had lost, they knew this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and the Zorath had made a powerful enemy. But for now, they had survived. They had proven that humanity would never back down, no matter the odds. The fight for survival was far from over, but the humans had sent a clear message to the Zorath and to the galaxy: never underestimate the strength and spirit of humanity. The battle had been fierce. The fight for the Zorath flagship had taken everything the humans had: blood, sweat, and countless lives. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, they had emerged victorious. The destruction of the flagship was just the beginning. It wasn't just a victory for the human fleet. It was a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was no longer a weak species hiding in the shadows of the universe. They had proven they could fight, and win, against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. As the human fleet withdrew from the battlefield, the wreckage of the Zorath flagship drifted into space, a symbol of the Zorath Empire's loss. The Zorath fleet, disorganized and without leadership, had fallen apart. With the flagship destroyed, the remaining Zorath forces had been scattered. The once feared empire was now in disarray, its plans for galactic domination shattered. The humans, though battered and bruised, had made a lasting impact. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. The world was united in celebration. The victory over the Zorath was more than just a military success. It was a symbol of human resilience, determination, and strength. Humanity had faced an existential threat and had not only survived but had triumphed. The entire planet had witnessed the rise of humanity as a galactic power, a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic Council, A group of powerful alien leaders who had once looked down on humanity had now been forced to reconsider their views. For centuries, they had believed that the Zorath Empire was the greatest force in the galaxy. The Zorath had been their champions, feared and respected by all. But the humans had shattered that illusion. They had defeated the Zorath when no one else could. They had shown the galaxy that no empire, no matter how powerful, was invincible. The council convened, their discussions filled with shock and awe. The humans had done what no one thought was possible. They had defeated the Zorath, a race known for their strength, their technology, and their ruthlessness. The council members knew that the Zorath's failure would not go unnoticed. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and now the humans had their attention. But the humans weren't celebrating for long. While Earth rejoiced in the victory, Captain Hartley and her crew were quietly processing the heavy cost of their triumph. They had lost many friends, comrades who had fought bravely and sacrificed their lives for the mission. Captain Hartley herself had seen the faces of the fallen, their blood on her hands, and their voices still echoing in her mind. The victory was sweet, but the losses were bitter. In the aftermath of the battle, Captain Hartley stood before Earth's leaders, her face stoic, but her eyes betraying the weight of the sacrifice. She was a hero to the people, hailed as a symbol of humanity's strength. But Hartley didn't see herself as a hero. She was a leader, a soldier, and a survivor. Her crew, the ones who had fought and died by her side, were the real heroes. Her speech before Earth's leaders was one of humility, reflection, and resolve. She spoke of the losses, the sacrifices, and the lessons learned from the war. "We may be small in the galaxy," she said, her voice strong despite the exhaustion that weighed on her, "but no one fights harder than humanity." She reminded them that the war was not over, and that they had proven something far more important than their ability to fight. They had proven their right to exist, to thrive, and to be a force in the galaxy. Her words resonated across the globe, and even in the vast reaches of space, the message was heard. Humanity was no longer a mere bystander in galactic affairs. They had earned their place. The human fleet was no longer a small, insignificant force. They were a respected power, a force to be reckoned with. The days of humanity being overlooked, underestimated, and ignored were over. The Zorath had made that clear. The Galactic Council had made that clear. And now, humanity had made that clear. But Captain Hartley knew that their victory had come with a heavy price. The human fleet had lost many ships, many good men and women, and much of their advanced technology in the battle. The Zorath had been a formidable enemy, and defeating them had taken everything the humans had. The cost of this victory would weigh on humanity for years to come, but it had been worth it. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. As Captain Hartley stood before Earth's leaders, she realized that the world would never be the same. Humanity had changed. They had proven their worth, their courage, and their resilience. But Hartley understood that this was only the beginning. The war with the Zorath might be over, but the universe was still full of threats, challenges, and unknown dangers. The humans had made their mark, but now they had to defend it. And they would. The humans had faced the darkness of space, the terror of an alien invasion, and had come out victorious. They had proven that no empire was invincible, and no enemy too strong to be defeated. Humanity had earned its place in the stars, and they were determined to keep it. The final scene shows Captain Hartley standing alone, gazing up at the stars. The vastness of the universe stretched out before her, a reminder that there was always more to explore, more to conquer, and more to protect. The camera pans out, showing the stars twinkling in the distance. For a moment, it feels like the universe is endless, and the future is uncertain. But in Captain Hartley's eyes, there is a spark of determination, of resolve. She had led her crew to victory, but she knew that the challenges ahead would be even greater. The galaxy was vast, and there were enemies out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. But humanity had proven that they would not back down. They would fight for their place in the universe, for their freedom, and for their future. And no matter what came next, they would face it together. The camera slowly pulls away, leaving Captain Hartley standing alone among the stars. She had sworn to protect humanity, and the universe had just learned that when humanity is pushed to the edge, they will rise up and fight back. The message was clear. The humans were here to stay, and they would never back down. As the scene fades to black, the final words echo in the distance, a reminder that the battle may be over, but the fight for humanity's place in the universe is far from finished. The human race had only just begun to realize the depth of their victory. The smoke and wreckage of the Zorath fleet still lingered in space as Captain Hartley and her crew stood before Earth's leaders, their faces tired but resolute. The defeat of the Zorath Empire had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. What had started as a desperate, almost suicidal mission had turned into a historic victory for humanity. But even as humanity celebrated, there was a new reality settling in. A reality that suggested their victory was only the beginning of something much larger. Back on Earth, the streets were filled with jubilant crowds. News stations broadcasted the triumph of the human fleet as people everywhere embraced the newfound recognition of their strength. The world had come together, united by a common purpose, a common victory. They had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and they had emerged victorious. The dream of a peaceful and united Earth seemed possible, but in the silence of space, the true scope of the situation was far from clear. While the humans celebrated, the galactic balance had been shaken to its core. Despite their newfound respect and admiration from the galaxy, Captain Hartley knew the truth. This war had been just one battle in an ongoing struggle. The Zorath might have been defeated, but the galaxy was vast, and there were enemies lurking in the shadows. Humanity had proven their worth, but the larger question remained: could they maintain their place in the stars? As Captain Hartley stood before Earth's leaders, a part of her mind was still out there, floating in space, thinking about the losses and sacrifices. She had seen her crew members die. She had seen the devastation, the broken bodies, and the damaged ships. The cost of their victory was unimaginable, and though humanity had emerged victorious, the wounds ran deep. Yet there was no time to mourn. There was still much work to do. The war with the Zorath may have ended, but the future was uncertain. Still, for now, humanity stood on the precipice of something new. They were no longer the underdogs of the galaxy. They had earned their place at the table. They had proven themselves capable of taking on an empire far stronger and more technologically advanced. But the galaxy was not a place of peace. It was a place of power struggles, ancient conflicts, and unknown dangers. Captain Hartley understood that, and she knew that the next challenge would be even greater than the one they had just faced. In the quiet of her office, as the celebrations on Earth continued outside, Captain Hartley received a strange communication. It was encrypted, a message from an unknown alien race. The message was short, but its impact was profound. "We have watched your victory. The galaxy is yours to command. Come, join us in the fight against the true enemy." The words sent a chill down her spine. Who were these beings, and what did they mean by the true enemy? Had they seen the destruction of the Zorath fleet and now considered humanity a potential ally, or did they have other motives entirely? The message was cryptic, and it left far more questions than answers. But one thing was clear: the galaxy had been watching, and humanity's victory had not gone unnoticed. The story left the door wide open for even greater challenges. The idea that a new enemy, one perhaps even more dangerous than the Zorath, was waiting in the wings sent a ripple of excitement through the human ranks. The fight had only just begun. The victory over the Zorath was important, yes, but it was just one chapter in a larger saga. Humanity had proven that they could survive, that they could fight, and that they could win. But the galaxy was vast, and the universe was filled with ancient threats and challenges that humanity had yet to understand. Captain Hartley stared at the message, feeling the weight of its implications. If humanity was to face a new enemy, they would need to be stronger, more united, and more prepared than ever before. The Zoreth had been just one obstacle, but the true test of humanity's strength was yet to come. As she stared out at the stars, the realization struck her. The galaxy might now know humanity's name, but they had not yet seen the full extent of what humanity could do. The camera pulled back from Hartley's face, lingering on her determined expression. She was a warrior, a leader, and a protector of humanity. The galaxy was full of unknowns, but she was ready for whatever was coming next. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them head-on. No matter the cost, no matter the enemy. The final scene slowly zoomed out, the stars twinkling like distant promises, as the story closed with a sense of foreboding excitement. The future was uncertain, but the humans were ready. The battle against the Zoreth had shown the galaxy that humans were no longer the passive observers they once were. They had shown the galaxy that they could fight, and fight hard. But the true enemy was still out there, and the humans' real test was yet to come. The camera faded to black, leaving a final message hanging in the air. We have watched your victory. The galaxy is yours to command. Come, join us in the fight against the true enemy. Humanity's story was far from over.